Lycidas, a monody by John Milton. This is part third of the presentation. Fame is no plant that grows on mortal soil, nor in the glistering foil. Fame is no plant. Fame does not belong to this world. Fame is compared to a plant which cannot grow on this earth. Mortal soil, earth where nothing lives for even. Glistening is shining with a false lustre, showy. Foil, gold or silver leaf in which a gem is set to increase its lustre. Fame shines by its own light and does not require publicity. Set off to the world, nor in broad rumor lies, but lives and spreads aloft by those pure eyes. Set off qualifies fame. Set off to the world, displayed to the world. Nor in broad rumor lies. Broad rumor, the poet's name being frequently discussed by the people, or cheap popularity, but lives and spreads aloft by those pure eyes and perfect witness of all judging Jove. Jove is the supreme god. When he gives the final judgment on the deeds of people, rewards all the deserving people. As he pronounces lastly on each deed, of so much fame in heaven, expect thy meed. Meed is reward. Fame is not like a precious stone set off to the world in a brilliant golden leaf, nor is it cheap popularity, but true fame or glory is that which is granted to man by the supreme God after examining the deeds of all men in the long run. It is his judgment which is the basis of true fame, and such fame is immortal. The poet should be satisfied with the fame which he would get as his reward from God and not care for anything else in the world. After the digression, the poet returns to his main theme, that is, the death of Lycidas. When his ship was wrecked, the ocean was calm and quiet. There was no storm blowing. Therefore, the ship must be blamed for the tragedy. It must have been constructed under an eclipse and cursed by witches. O fountain Artheus, and thou honoured flood, smooth sliding Mincius, crowned with vocal reeds, that strain I heard was of a higher mood. O fountain Artheus, a fountain in the island of Ortygia. Flood is river. Mincius is a tributary of the river Po in Italy. Crowned with vocal reeds, at the banks of which the reeds are growing, Artheus and Mincius represent pastoral verse. That strain, words of Apollo regarding the immortality of real fame, which consoled Milton for the time being. Higher mood, sublime style or tone. O fountain Artheus, and thou honoured flood, smooth sliding Mincius, crowned with vocal reeds, that strain I heard was of a higher mood. But now my ode proceeds, my pastoral muse proceeds, and listens to the herald of the sea. Herald of the sea, Triton son of Neptune, god of the sea. He carried a reed horn or shell, which he blew at the command of Neptune in order to pacify the waves of sea. Here Triton appears to defend Neptune from the suspicion of having caused Lycidas' death by a storm. Triton is therefore herald or messenger of the sea that came in Neptune's plea. Neptune's plea is the plea of the sea god that the ocean was not at fault in the death of Lycidas. He asked the waves and asked the felon winds, what hard mishap hath doomed this gentle swain? Felon is cruel, swain is shepherd or young man Lycidas, and questioned every gust of wings. Rugged wings means rough and violent winds that blows from off each beaked promontory. Beaked promontory is hard land projecting into the sea, is jutting out like the beaks of birds. They knew not of his story. Of his story, the sad death of Lycidas. The sage Hippotades their answer brings. Hippotades is god of winds. That not a blast was from his dungeon straight. His dungeon, the cave in which the winds are imprisoned by Aeolus, who had not allowed any blast of wind to stir out. The air was calm and on the level brine. The air was calm, there was no storm, the weather was good. Level brine, level surface of the ocean, implying the fact that the ocean was not rough when Edward King was drowned. Sleek Penelope with all her sisters played. Sleek Penelope is sea nymph having soft hair. She played with her sister nymphs, the Nereids. It was that fatal and perfidious bark, the ill-fated and treacherous ship in which King sailed, built in the eclipse and rigged with curses dark. Built in the eclipse, according to popular superstition, anything done during an eclipse is bound to bring misfortune. And rigged with curses dark. The ship was cursed by witches while it was being rigged, that is, fitted out with ropes, that sunk so low that sacred head of thine, so low, so deep, that sacred head of thine, the pious head of Lycidas. The words of Apollo which gave me comfort were of a higher value. Now I listen to the herald of Neptune, which gives plea that the waves of the ocean were not responsible for the death of Edward King. Neptune made inquiries from all waves and winds, but they know nothing of the mishap. Hippocrates also brings the message that the atmosphere was quiet and calm, and the surface of the water was level. The nymphs of water joyfully played there. The ship itself was fatal and treacherous, and it was built at a very inauspicious time. That was why it sank so low, the sacred head of Lycidas. In keeping with the pastoral tradition, Milton now introduces a procession of mourners mourning the death of Lycidas. One of them is Camus, representing the University of Cambridge, the friends and teachers of Edward King. The other mourner is Saint Peter, who mourns the death of King because he was intended for the church and would have been a true shepherd to his sheep. The introduction of Saint Peter provides Milton with an excuse for a long digression, denouncing the corrupt clergy of his times. Next, Camus, Reverend Sire, went footing slow, his mantle hairy and his bonnet sedge. Camus, the god of the river Cam, on which Cambridge is situated, is the representative of the university. King's death was mourned by his friends at the university. It is natural that Camus should represent all of them. Mantle hairy, a loose cloak having fur on it, inwrought with figures dim and on the edge, like to that sanguine flower inscribed with woe. Inwrought with figures dim, inscribed with dim figures, sanguine flower refers to hasten. The flower sprang from the blood of a beautiful youth. Ah, who hath reft, quoth he, my dearest pledge? Last came and last did go, the pilot of the Galilean lake. Ah, who hath reft? Reft is taken away. Quoth he, said he, pledge is child. Last came and last did go. The mourner who came last of all and who stayed the longest, and so was the last to go, the pilot of the Galilean lake. It refers to Saint Peter. He is the most distinguished among the mourners. Two massy keys he bore of metals twain. Two massy keys. Saint Peter had in his hand two keys, one of gold and the other of iron. These were the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Two massy keys he bore of metals twain, the gold opes, the iron shuts amain. He shook his mitred locks, and stern bespake. Mitred is a tall cap worn by bishops. How well could I have spared for thee, young swain, shepherd, that is Lycidas. Eno of such as for their bellies' sake, for the sake of power and pelf, creep and intrude and climb into the fold. Creep and intrude and climb into the fold. The church is a sheepfold into which the hireling wolves, that is, the corrupt clergy, intrude themselves, their only care being to share the endowments of the church. Of other care they little reckoning make than how to scramble at the shearer's feast and shove away the worthy bidden guest. Of other care they little reckoning make. They do not care for anything else except to scramble, to quarrel or fight for, at the shearer's feast, the feast held after shearing, after the year's work is over, and shove away, to push aside, the worthy bidden guest. The worthy bidden guest are those priests who reserve things. In keeping with the pastoral tradition, Milton introduces a group of mourners who came to mourn the death of Lycidas. One of them is Camus. Camus is the name of the river near which Cambridge University is situated. Here, Camus symbolizes kings, teachers, and friends at the university, and it is quite appropriate that they should be represented as mourning his death. Camus is an old, respectable personage, and his old age signifies the antiquity of the university. He comes walking slowly to mourn the death of his beloved Lycidas. His mantle is hairy, and his headdress is made of sedge. He asked with grief as to who had taken away from him his dearest child. All Cambridge loved Lycidas and now mourned his death. The second mourner was Saint Peter himself. He carried with him two heavy keys, one of gold and the other of iron. The golden key opens the gates of heaven, and the iron one shuts them with force. He shook with sorrow his grey-haired head, on which he was wearing the headdress of a bishop, he being the first bishop of the Christian Church. He spoke angrily and denounced the corrupt clergy of the time. Lycidas was an honest young man who would have become an honest clergy and true shepherd to his sheep. Saint Peter could have sacrificed a number of other clergy to save his life. Their death would not have been such a great loss as is the death of Lycidas. Contemporary clergy are corrupt. They are a large number of them who are greedy for worldly wealth and power and who have entered the church only for the sake of earning money. They are like hungry wolves who enter a sheepfold and destroy the sheep. They are enemies of their congregations and not their friends and guides. They care only for their profit and for nothing else. They are like uninvited guests who rudely force their way in and push away the worthy guests who have been invited to a feast given by a shepherd to celebrate the shearing of his sheep. They have entered the church by using improper and crooked practices and have deprived the honest clergy of their due rights and places. Milton denounces such corrupt clergy as greedy gluttons who are blind to everything else but their profits and incomes. They are blind to their duty, they only know how to feather their own nests. Blind mouths that scarce themselves know how to hold a sheep hook or have learned aught as the least. Blind mouths. Reference is to the priest who swallows things ruthlessly. A sheep hook or have learned means it indicates the ignorance of the corrupt clergy. They know nothing of their duties as clergy. That to the faithful herdman's art belongs. What recks it them? What need they? They are sped. They have achieved enough of worldly prosperity. What recks it them? What do they care? They are sped. They have achieved enough of worldly prosperity. And when they list their lean and fleshy songs, grate on their scrannel pipes of wretched straw. Songs are the sermons of these corrupt priests. Whenever it pleases them, they speak to their flocks in a harsh and uninviting manner. The hungry sheep look up and are not fed, but swollen with wind and the rank mist they draw, rot inwardly, and foul contagion spread. The hungry sheep, people who want spiritual food from them, rank mist they draw. People open their mouths, receive no spiritual food, but only inhale foul mist. Besides what the grim wolf with privy paw, secret undetected paw, whenever the priests take things, they do not let people know of it. Daily devours apace and nothing said. But that two-handed engine at the door, two-handed engine, an instrument or machine handled with two hands, stands ready to smite once and smite no more. Why should they care to learn anything of their trade? They have already amassed good wealth. Whenever they like, they address the congregations of people in a very harsh and unpleasant voice. The ordinary people hungrily look to them for a spiritual lesson, but they get nothing from their sermons. They open their mouths, but instead of having sermons, they only inhale foul mist which spoils them. The result is that the foul corruption spreads from person to person. The corrupt priests are like wolves and exercise no restraint in matters of earning wealth. But the destruction or fall of such people is quite imminent. The wrath of God in the form of reformation would strike a forceful blow at all such corrupt practices. Only one blow would be sufficient to put an end to all these evils. No second blow would be needed. Machines and powerful gadgets will knock them down. They are not capable of surviving even one stroke of powerful engine managed by two hands.